Many of you just watched Tim Kaine and Hung Cao go head-to-head in the U.S. Senate debate at Norfolk State University. Good evening, I'm Maria Elena Baloris.
And I'm Brett Hall. Thanks for joining us for our special post-debate digital show. We had several surprising moments tonight. Cao had several comments that garnered some reaction in the audience, including about Target, Asians in math, and as well as who the Navy should be looking to recruit. We're going to have a lot of discussion about these upcoming pivotal moments, but we're also going to talk a little bit about some of the stakes here. I mean, Cao would be the first Republican since the late Senator John Warner to take the U.S. Senate for Virginia if he were to win. But of course, looking at the past 3 years, Maria Elena, we have a lot of ground that he would have to make up. Last time, Kaine won by 16 points.
Well, I was at that re-election campaign, and it was called that night very, very quickly. We do have a team on the ground there, but before we get to all of them, Brett, I do want to get your thoughts on some of the topics that were discussed, and we'll get to them in just a minute here.
Well, yeah, so some of the topics that were discussed were the big issues of the day. They talked about the Port of Virginia, the port strike right off the bat. What would they do to try to solve this? Because each day this goes on, more people are going to be impacted. And then they also talked about, of course, the issue in the Middle East and how that would be addressed. Again, anything that you missed tonight, this debate and all the answers, our digital team at WAVY.com is going to have that posted. Tune into that right after the debate. But right now, we want to go to Markeisha.
Oh yeah, our Tenor Tide's Markeisha Jackson was there for the debate. So Markeisha, what are you seeing on campus right now with some of the reaction you're hearing at this moment?
Yeah, Brett and Lena, lots of reaction from students, people in that audience who got to sit in on that debate. Lots of them telling me they feel like it was a successful debate and they walked out of that auditorium knowing more about the standpoints of these candidates on very critical issues. I've been in the spin room all night with other media outlets, analysts, all taking this in. We're going to give you a live look now at everyone in here. We're still in here working to garner and gather more reaction to what we just heard. Now, a lot of the issues addressed tonight were ones impacting voters across the Commonwealth and voters across the nation. The first one at hand was addressing the ongoing ILA strikes affecting our nation's ports. Both candidates explaining that they understand the struggles our port workers are going through and understand their search for a better deal. Kaine and Cao addressed the ongoing crisis in the Middle East, the ever-rising cost of living, housing affordability, and gun control. Lots of reaction from individuals in the audience. They were supposed to hold applauses until the end, but you can hear during that debate lots of eruptions from the crowd when either candidate would say something that really resonated with viewers and those listening here in this auditorium. And while their views are different, voters got to see, like I said, just where candidates stand on so many issues. Like I said, I'm still here on Norfolk State University's campus in the spin room working to gather much more sound from students, from those who listen, from analysts that we have here on campus. And I will be bringing you the very latest on all of that throughout the night on WAVY News 10, on air and online. Brett and Lena.
All right, Markeisha, thank you. They also touched on reproductive issues, IVF. So really was a broad range of topics we heard tonight.
Yeah, they got through a lot in about an hour's time. And we've already heard from Kaine's staff saying they believe he won the debate. Yeah. And I can say objectively that you could tell that Kaine was the polished politician there.
Yes.
30 years, first elected to Richmond City Council 30 years ago this year. Cao has only run for office once before. House of Representatives. Now we're going to go to the person who leads the House of Delegates. They are joined right now by 10 on Your Side anchor Aisha Tolliver. Good evening, Aisha.
That's right. I'm here with Speaker of the House, Don Scott. And now, Don, I know you said that you really feel like Kaine held his own while Cao really just zoomed in on immigration. Talk to me about how you felt tonight, Gwen.
Well, it was like watching a masterclass. Senator Kaine came across as experienced, cool, collected, in command of the facts and the data that impact everyday Virginians. He knew he was in Hampton Roads, so he knew everything about what was going on with the Port of Virginia because of experience. He understands HBCUs here at Norfolk State and the importance of education. And Mr. Cao just focused on blaming immigrants for every single thing, and he focused on the extreme issues of MAGA. He has all of the cray-cray of Trump with none of the charisma, and so the issue was he was not able to come across as believable. The issues that he says where he's blaming women and comparing women to Nazis who make the difficult choice around pregnancy just demonstrated his extreme position. He's in favor of a national ban on abortion with no exceptions for incest or rape. So he is out of touch with Virginians. In 2023, we just had an election where abortion and reproductive health care was at the top of the ballot. And so he's out of touch with everyday Virginians. And Senator Kaine was right in line with dealing with the solutions that impact everyday Virginians, dealing with the economy, making sure that we promote our jobs and our workforce, and making sure that we continue to promote an aspirational American dream where education is the bedrock of our nation.
So I did want to ask you, there was one moment that people kind of stopped at, right? So it was Cal, and he was giving a bit of percentage numbers, and Kaine pushed back and said, that's not correct, you don't have those numbers right. And Cal's response was, there are two things you never do. You never wear a red shirt in Target, and you never question an Asian on math. What did you think about that response?
I'm not surprised. That is the type of anti-DEI racism that folks like that in that community are using now. If I were Asian American, I would probably be offended because it says a lot about how he thinks about race, that he pigeonholes Asian kids and Asian people, and I don't want to know what he would have said about black people if he, with the type of stereotype that he used. That was a stereotype, and it's unfortunate in this situation, but the bigger thing is that he's not qualified, he's not ready for prime time, and he's certainly not ready to represent the needs and interests of almost 9 million Virginians. He didn't know anything about the port. When they said ILA, he didn't understand that that meant the international laborers and the longshoremen. He didn't know what he was talking about, so he couldn't answer the question. So Senator Kaine has command of the facts, he understands what we need to do, and he talked about, how important it is about education. And Mr. Kyle wanted to literally ban the Department of Education. He's on a university campus saying that he wants to ban the Department of Education, and he never denied it, because he said that anything the federal government does is wrong. And Senator Kaine pointed out that it was the federal government that passed Brown v. Board of Education and enacted anti-segregation laws to desegregate schools. If the state had had their way, we'd still be desegregated. I mean, we'd still be segregated. And so we understand what's at stake in this election. Education is at stake. An economy that works for everybody is at stake, and making sure we protect reproductive health care. He literally has said that he wants a ban on abortion, and he has not changed his position.
So would you say tonight was 100% a win for Kaine, or do you think it was close?
It was a slam dunk for Senator Kaine. It was like watching a professor work with a poor student, teaching him and trying to help him. Like I said before, Mr. Kyle had all of the cray-cray of MAGA with none of the charisma of Trump, so it doesn't come across the same way. I bet any Republican here, I told him I'll bet him $100 if he gets within 10 points of Senator Kaine in this race.
So after this, I hear some of you guys are going to get together at a bar on Granby Street and kind of celebrate this, what you're considering a win.
Oh, it was a huge win for Senator Kaine. He did a fantastic job. He was right on all of the issues: education, the economy, jobs, combating inflation, dealing with the issues that everyday Virginians are facing. He's a Virginian. He understands Virginia. He's been a mayor of a city. He's been lieutenant governor. He's been governor. And he's been now a senator for over 12 years. So he is the perfect man for the job right now in Virginia.
All right, Don, thank you so much for your time. We certainly appreciate you. Well, Lena, Brett, I mean, a lot of topics discussed, some things that were a bit shocking for people who were here, and how will the voters decide? That's ultimately up to them, but the platform was certainly given for the candidates tonight. Lena, Brett?
Aisha, thank you so much. What's interesting fact, I was pouring over some data from the Virginia elections, and if we're based off of the turnout we've been getting the last 2 years, which is between 70 and 75%, 5%, between 5 to 7% of voters have already voted in early voting, which, absent COVID, is quite remarkable. So there are people that have already made their decision that might be watching this debate, and you have to sometimes wonder, do they have regrets? That will be that remains to be seen. And
there were some students at Norfolk State University earlier today who spoke with our Andy Fox, who said they were waiting to see what happened at the debate before they cast their ballots. Andy is there on campus. Looks like he is joined by some of those students. So Andy, let's send it out to you and hear what those students have to say.
Well, this is Zachary Jackson and Janari Davis. He is the student body president, and he is the chief of staff. Okay, so we got that out of the way. Now, we interviewed them earlier today. We ran reports on you, 4, 5, and 6, about what was important to you. Zachary, let me start with you as the president of the student body. What are your takeaways from this debate?
Well, one, I want to first thank everyone for coming out. I want to thank the candidates for visiting Norfolk State University and seeing the infrastructure and the great things that we have to offer. But I want to say my takeaway from today would be so much of listening to what the candidates have to say. These are the things that we as students would be able to take to the polls to be able to cast our votes, and with the right candidate that fits us as students of the state of Virginia and also Norfolk State University.
Now, you said one of your big issues was funding of the historic black colleges and universities.
Yes, that
now,
is
both
true.
of them express support for that.
They did, but there were candidates that I saw fit that expressed it more so, that leaned towards a way of understanding what we mean about giving those fundings to HBCU specifically in the state of Virginia. So with that being said, we will take that information as critical and go to the polls and be able to cast our votes with the right candidate.
Okay, Janari?
So I agree with what Zakari said. They both stated they would support HBCUs. As Senator Kaine stated, he's been lieutenant governor, governor has been the Senate. Many buildings on campus and programs that he has supported. So we can't say that he has supported HBCUs. He supported many of our programs. We have the NEMAS program, the McDermott Building of Science. We have a clean room, the only HBCU that has a clean room in the country.
What else stood out to you?
More so of how they went about with the border issues. These are things that not only the candidates, them as candidates of the state of Virginia are looking at, but also the candidates of the United States that are casting themselves for the presidency. So that's really critical, and happened to be both of these candidates are running at the same time that the nation's general election is going on. So it really dives into what it really matters, not only on the federal level, but also the state.
Right. And with Candidate Cal, when they were saying, well, how are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? Kept going back to the border and immigration and the amount of money we're spending on that.
And that is true, because we wonder how is that going to take place. But there are things that the senator himself pointed out that are much more better in a better program and policy that he's looking to cast, rather than what Mr. Cal has suggested with his suggestions.
Now, education was the big issue for both of you that you had said to me. Now, he has supported closing down the Department of Education. Does that stick with you? Does that play with you?
Yeah, I think that's a radical opinion, because you can't take away the Department of Education. That is the overall goal setter for education in the United States. Virginia is a top state for education, top state for business, top state to raise a child. We have great education system in Virginia, school system, even higher education. I currently serve on the state council higher education, which we help make decisions for higher education in Virginia. We see that Virginia is growing in enrollment for higher education. People want to come to Virginia for higher education. You have Virginia Tech, you have Norfolk State, you have James Madison.
Right, and they brought up the point that getting rid of the Department of Education would hurt historically black colleges and universities.
Right.
And that is what Tim Kaine brought up.
Correct. And that's not even a good idea. So when you think of getting rid of a Department of Education and you bring up HBCUs and how you want to benefit, you're contradicting yourself. And also you are attacking HBCUs critically from that statement, because you are saying, I will get rid of you and I won't give you any resources that we are depending on because we're already underfunded. So come up with a plan that also enable us to be funded more in the state and also assisting the department rather than getting rid of it.
Because people think that HBCUs don't produce great people. We produce great people and great educators, great people around the country. There's many people who want HBCUs who are great people in the world. You have Vice President Kamala Harris. You have many politicians in Congress who are winning HBCUs who have made it successfully in life.
Well, I don't think anyone doesn't think historically black colleges and universities, we think they produce fantastic students.
Right. Even athletes, even athletics in general, not even talking about education. So you have athletes who come from HBCUs who are in the NFL are doing good in life.
Now, real quick, tell me about the person you lost to crime.
So Marion Collins, I was a senior in high school. I was serving the school board. I lost him to gun violence outside of the high school, actually. It was a wrong place, wrong time shooting.
Now, what about you? You lost someone to crime, too. I brought this up in a report earlier.
Yes, Jahari George. He was a student here at Norfolk State University.
Are you disappointed that you didn't hear more about crime and gun violence, and what are we going to do about it?
Yes, I think even from the candidates, also from the question asking, there could have been more questions involving gun violence so we could hear their thoughts on gun violence. Gun violence hits harder to me. Coming from a city, Portsmouth, where gun violence is really high, that kind of bothered me that we didn't hear their policies on gun violence. If we would have heard that probably would have made me more like, okay, I understand both sides.
Okay, the last question. You both walked in, you said, I don't know who I'm going to vote for, but I know that after this debate, I will know for whom I am voting. Have you come up with a decision, and why?
Yes, I have come with a decision on who I'm voting for. Tonight made me a clear choice as a student, as a person for civic engagement in general in the world.
Okay, well, who are you going to vote for?
I plan on voting for Senator Tim Kaine for this upcoming Senate election.
Okay, now what about you? You wanted to hold on until you heard the debate, and then have you made your decision?
I haven't made a decision, but we live in a democracy, and I want to uphold that constitutional right to make sure when we go to the polls, we cast our vote. But I can assure you this, I will be casting the right vote, which stands with not only myself as a resident of the state of Virginia, but also the student body for Norfolk State University.
Well, listen, thank you guys so much. They came out of their classes. I told you not to come out too long, and I kept you too long. And you both are fantastic to have come out earlier, to be part of our reports, to tell us what you wanted to hear and what you wanted to see, and then to come back here and to give these candidates a report card. Okay, real quick, last thing. Who gets what grade? Cal?
I will give him a F.
How about you?
I'll give him a D.
D. Okay, but that's it. So that's it from here, and we appreciate it from the campus of Norfolk State University. Thank you.
The future in you.
Right, go Spartans.
Yes, thank you.
Back to you guys.
Hey, Andy, we're here with Joel Rubin, who says you never go long. And I have to ask you a question, Andy.
He said what?
You never talk too long, Andy. That's
never
all
talk
I'm
too
saying,
long.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you a question.
Go ahead, ask me a question. I got a question. I got an answer. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Here's your question. You have covered the last time that a Republican went to the Senate. And of course, John Warner, he had a long-standing, so I'm going to exclude him. But when George Allen was able to go to the Senate in 2000, what differentiated him and allowed him to do that? And what would it take for Cal to be able to flip this seat?
It would take, I will tell you that in the very beginning, Democrats had strong control over the House and Senate, and the Democrats let down their guard, and Republicans were able to get the younger candidates in there, and those younger candidates kept on winning, and they started chipping away at the Democrat majorities, and then suddenly the Democrats woke up one day and the Republicans were in charge. I didn't hear all of the question, but that is the answer that I'm giving you. Did I not understand any part of the question? What would you like me to say about George Allen?
No. I was just asking more or less what he had to do to flip the seat that he did from former governor and Senator Robb at the time. But I think you did answer the question on what was going on. Thank you so much, Andy. Right. We're actually going to bring it back in here right now with Joel Rubin, who also probably has, he used to be political reporter for WAVY, covered those races, and has some analysis on.
George Allen had been a governor. Remember, he'd also been a congressman. So the same thing that Kaine brings to it. You know, he had been, as he mentioned, mayor of Richmond, which is a very challenging city, and then lieutenant governor, and then a U.S. senator now for 2 terms. And I think you saw that during the thing tonight. I mean, you know, Cal, I got to tell you something. That was a fast-moving debate. I'll give both moderators a lot of credit for moving it along. There were short answers. You have 45 seconds. You have a minute. You have 30 seconds. I was like, how can you even get your thoughts together? So I give Cal and Kaine credit for formulating answers in very short periods of time. And they got to a lot of issues in an hour. Last night's debate with Vance was 90 minutes. This was 60 minutes. So it was a condensed amount of time. They got to a lot of issues. So I'll give Cal a lot of credit to be able just to stand up there with Kaine, who clearly, with the 30-some years, and he can discredit what he's done in the 37 years, but you know, he did hold significant positions. And we heard that tonight when Kaine's talking about, I've got a bipartisan bill I'm working at with the Republican senator from Alabama, and I'm doing this. He was able to make the case that he's been being an effective senator.
There were obviously a few moments in that debate that got cheers and chants.
And even testy.
Yeah, a little bit testy, eyebrow raising. But Joel, what would you say is the big moment of the night?
Well, I think when they were talking about DEI and how that was impacting on recruitment into the armed services, and obviously Cal, you know, says it's a terrible thing, and that what we have to get are alpha males and alpha females that will tear your guts out.
Yeah, the quote was, well, he said, when we are using a drag queen to recruit for the Navy, that's not the people we want. We need alpha males and alpha females that will rip out their own guts, eat them, and ask for seconds. Those are the young men and women who are going to win wars. And that's what got the first applause of the night that you were referring to.
Yeah. And look, the man served in Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia. Okay, he was in Special Forces. He went to the Naval Academy. He clearly loved, and we all appreciate the service, you know, that he gave. But that's his main qualification for running, and he got the endorsement of Donald Trump. So that's what he was sort of running. He did run for Congress, as you had mentioned, but that was, you know, when you're running for a political office, typically the experience of being in another political office is what the voters are looking at, which has always served Kaine well, because he's moved from this position to this position to this position. And the polls show that he's up 10, 11 points or something like that. It would be a huge upset for him, for Kaine to lose this election. But I'll give Cal credit. He worked it hard tonight and tried to make some points. I will say this, and I think, you know, the nation was treated to a debate last night between the two vice presidential candidates, Walz and Vance. And the border issue, the immigration issue, was the one I think that Vance probably felt he was most on solid ground. He was making some, and I think we saw the same thing tonight here from Cal. He kept talking about the money being spent and all this sort of stuff. He wasn't as good on the reproductive issues, which I think the same thing happened to Vance last night. So as I'm seeing this whole campaign, this Republican versus Democratic campaign coming along in this country, that is the issue that clearly the Republicans believe is their winning issue.
I think what was also interesting, and I think it's so important probably to highlight these days, is where candidates are on the same. And last night in the vice presidential debate, we saw several times where they agreed with each other. Not different tonight. They both talked about the importance of nuclear energy in Virginia, both Kaine and Cal. They both, in a question about should reparations be given to African Americans that were brought here as enslaved, they both said they believe investing in education is the best equalizer and the best way to bring that forward. So they were not at each other's throats the entire time. Again, there were several exchanges where they did get testy. The comment where that Aisha referred to earlier, that Kaine or Cal said that two truths are don't wear a red shirt in the Target and then don't question Asians on math. That was in response to him saying that Kaine has been unsuccessful in getting bills through. So there were several testy exchanges here. I have to ask, do you think some of that is because, and we looked at the campaign financing, we followed the funds for this race, the ones that we could. Kaine is not receiving help from Democrats, but Cal is not receiving help from Republicans. And
and that's pretty clear that both the Democrats and Republicans think this is a done deal here. They know what's going to happen. You know, one thing that Cal tried to do a lot was tell us about his Vietnam past. You know, he came here and talked about his parents and how they came here and how much they love this country and all that. And I think that probably, you know, resonated with some people. At the same time, you know, he's making this argument about the immigrants coming, you know, from the South. So, I mean, that might have been a little disconcerting to a lot of viewers. Like, okay, you're an immigrant, but you don't like those immigrants. So, and he says, you know, we stayed in line, we didn't jump the line. He said that tonight. So I think that's an interesting issue and one that, you know, we kept hearing the biography story from Hung Cal tonight.
Well, one other thing, Brett, you mentioned of things the candidates agree on is that they both said they would vote to certify the election, which obviously is a question that politicians are being asked after what happened January 6th. So that is another thing where they both agreed. But to your point, Joel, we have been talking a lot in our coverage leading up to the debate about how this is Hung Cal's chance to kind of introduce himself to people. Tim Kaine is a name that has been around for decades. Do you both think what happened tonight was enough for him to solidify his name?
Well, this wasn't like Harris against Trump. I mean, love WAVY TV, okay? Right. And I know you were on in several markets across the state. But you
nationwide, News Nation.
Well, News Nation. They don't get to vote in Idaho for this one.
That's true.
But,
That's true.
But, I mean, those presidential debates and vice presidential were on every network. So I don't know how many people actually saw this. They'll be reporting about it, and we'll hear some things. But you know, my sense is that we Virginians, and I'm a Virginian, have known Tim Kaine for a long time and have elected him. Same with Mark Warner, frankly. And so it's going to take a lot for sort of a first-time, obviously, Senate candidate, a guy that's never held office before, to convince Virginians that it's time for Tim Kaine to go. Now, there may be another Republican out there. Look, we have 3 statewide candidates, right? I mean, the governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, who are all Republicans, and you would think are going to be statewide candidates either for their own offices or the next office up, or potentially to run against Mark Warner. So at some point, somebody who's actually been elected statewide may be running against Mark Warner in 2 years. And that will be interesting to see where we are with politics. But, you know, for Hung Cal, it was tough, but he got Donald Trump's endorsement, and that's how he won the nomination.
That's true. One of the other things that you brought up about the importance of Cal tonight, I was also told like his best chance is a viral moment. Do you think he's going to reach that viral moment with a few of those quips, or do you think not enough to bring in the payday?
I think he'll reach some viral moments with some people who would have supported him anyway. I mean, I think the line that you just read about, and I think this is a big issue with conservatives. The DEI, remember when Harris got the nomination, she was the first thing out of everybody's mouth, or the opponents, was she's the DEI candidate. And I think that resonated with a lot of people because they're very upset with the whole DEI thing that's happening in every agency and institution in this country. And so I'm not surprised that, that keeps coming back up in these things. And so he played it off. I mean, I give him credit. It was a good use of that in the answer to the question about who are we recruiting. And by the way, both of them acknowledge that we're having trouble recruiting people into the military. Kaine says we got to show them that it's going to help you in your career as opposed to not help you. And he pointed to his son, who has done well in the military, et cetera. So it is a challenge. He was offering a solution. We need more alpha males and females to do this. Now, whether that's going to increase the forces that we need, I don't know. But it was interesting questions. So I think you're going to see that one replayed.
I think that'll definitely get some airwave time. But in this news cycle, when there's constantly things happening, what will be the longevity of that viral moment? Will it be enough to propel him?
It depends if you put it in a commercial.
Well, I was just about to say that, Will.
True.
And right now, again, we are still waiting, and we're actually going to be doing hopefully a piece on this Monday about how with early voting, campaign finance and knowing what who's funding your candidates has become harder. Because while in Virginia, we've moved the campaign finance deadlines for federal, which these two candidates fall under, as well as Kagan's and Missy Schmazel and the rest of the districts, we don't know yet. The last information we have is June 30th. We do not know how much they've raised.
Wow.
All we know is that they're not getting support from the PACs, neither of those Senate candidates. If you've been watching WAVY TV 10, you're seeing the campaign ad from Kaine going positive. But if Cal's not coming after him negative, will he go that way to give him more name recognition? That will be interesting to see.
Well,
and right now, we do not know if Cal's going to have the capacity to go on TV. I can only imagine statewide he will. But if he's not on yet, with once again 7% of likely voters already going to the polls, he's behind.
Well, look, I'm a TV viewer, used to be a TV reporter, okay? And
you're a media mogul.
A media
really
mogul.
A media
okay,
mogul.
A media mogul. But you could call your traffic department upstairs here and find out how much is being bought and how much is available. Because keep in mind, these guys can say, well, somebody just handed me a bunch of money, I want to go buy a bunch of ads. Well, guess what? You've got a ton of ads running in your congressional race here. You've got the mayor candidates. There's 5 in Virginia Beach. There's 2 or 3 here in Portsmouth and all this. So the viewers are starting to tune out to the ads right now, and we're still a month out from the election. So it's people get sick of it, okay? And even unless you run an ad that is like memorable, okay? And I think at the end of the day, look, the presidential election is the one that's really grabbing everybody's attention. This congressional election will do okay, but they're not. Both of these candidates are not Trump and Harris, okay? And so I think these two guys, like you said, I don't think they're raising a ton of money. They don't need to raise a lot of money. It's not coming from the parties. So, and I think it would be hard for Kaine to go and say, really hit up his friends. I need it. I might, we're within 1% or something, unless they've got some poll. So I think we're not going to see a lot of advertising in that election, and certainly not enough from Cal to make a difference.
I would say that another observation I had that we haven't gotten to yet is it was clear to me in the early moments of this debate tonight that while Cal was very much sticking to the Republican talking points, Kaine was making an effort to go to the middle. Wow. He mentioned Governor Glenn Youngkin as well as Jason Miyares. Youngkin twice, Miyares once, talking about the collaboration. And remember, Youngkin is the one that flipped the state in the last statewide election. We haven't had one since those elections because we didn't have a Senate race in 2022. So that was very interesting to me.
It was very interesting and smart, very smart. Tim Kaine is nothing but smart, okay?
And an experienced politician.
And an experienced politician. Look, He was in one of the most famous debates of all time with Hillary Clinton back in 2016. So he knows how to do a bad debate, and tonight he probably knew how to do a much better debate. So give the man credit from, for learning from that. But it was great though. I just liked the format. I kind of liked just the pace of it. I mean, my heart was sort of beating, fast. It was like between Tom and the
he was scribbling down notes.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, slow down so I can remember what you guys just said.
Yeah.
Because it was going really so fast. Look, they all have websites, they all have position papers and all this stuff. So if you're really interested, you can do it. But it's a good point that you made about how many people have already voted. And I said this to Chris Horn the other day when I was interviewing. I think he used it on the air. Was how many people are going to regret? Oh God, I wish I had done that, before, because this thing just happened. Smozzle and Higgins have a debate next week.
I believe so. Yeah, with the Hampton Roads Chamber.
The Chamber of Commerce. I'll be there to watch that. And so some things are still going to happen, but the most important thing is things can still happen in the world. Right. I mean, could you have guessed that all those bombs were going to blow up and the cell phones or whatever it was, the pagers would happen? I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening every day in the world right now. We got this strike. Now, I don't know that it's a political issue. It isn't right now. We're only a day into it, but 2-3 weeks into it, what happens?
Right.
And so things are going to happen. But the race that's really the closest, I think, is the presidential race. And of course, across the country, it's not. We know what's going to happen in California. We know what's going to happen in New York. We know what's going to happen in Alabama. But it's all going to be focused where the candidates are: Pennsylvania, North Carolina, these sort of places.
And just say, we're not discouraging voting early if that's something you need to do because you're moving somewhere.
I'm glad to be able to take advantage of it.
Right.
And do that.
Can I just tell you, I'm going to miss the hell out of you.
Oh,
really. I mean, I can watch anybody. I worked at a show at 13 for years, and obviously worked here. But my wife and I, watch you guys, you and Tom. And I think this market has been well served by you for how many years you've been here?
8 years.
8 years.
Yeah.
And we're going to miss your shining face, but also your very professional demeanor on television. Good luck in Peru.
Thank you.
Come back when you're done.
Yeah. It'll be a couple years. We'll hopefully.
Come on back.
We'll come on back. We'll see what the Navy has to say.
Yeah.
But thank you, Joel, for being here and
My
sharing
pleasure.
your insight. As always, both of you, Brett, part of our investigative political team. We do want to know what you all think about who won the debate tonight. We are asking if it's Senator Tim Kaine or Hung Kao. Right now, looks like more people are voting Hung Kao, 54% of the vote. But the debate wrapped up about, 30 minutes ago? But, we shall see. That's what our voters are saying, our viewers are saying right now.
And WAVY.com, Joel was saying you could look up more about the candidates. We have worked very hard behind the scenes to also make sure you have a comprehensive guide for all the races that are going to be on your ballot, especially here in the 7 cities. So you can read a little bit more about Kaine, as well as Kao, as well as all the congressional candidates. And in due time, for anybody that's watching from North Carolina, watching what's going on up here in Virginia, we're going to have information about your statewide races and your state house races there too. North Carolina, it's even hotter over there. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, it has been a pleasure to chat with you both and to chat with our team in the field. We're going to have more on the debate coming up tonight on WAVY News 10 at 11.